Good morning, students. Myself, Dr. Vijender Singh Tamar, Associate Professor in English. Presently, I have been posted at Government College, Gudha. In the series of video lectures, today we will talk on important and well-known poem, Ode to the West Wind. It is prescribed in BA Part 2nd, subject English Literature, paper 1st. In this lecture, we will try to make analysis of two stanzas of the poem Ode to the West Wind. That is explanation of first two stanzas, stanza 1 and stanza 2. Before we begin or we come to the poem, let us talk about something. The poet. Poet, as you know, is one of the 5 greatest romantic poets of English literature. Percy Bysshe Shelley, he was born in 1792 and died in 1822. That is, he lived just for 30 years or 31 years in the world. But he gave so many important ideas, or his works had made him immortal. He is also regarded as the finest lyric poets in English language. He is well known for his company, particularly his association with John Keats and Lord Byron. Both of them were contemporary of Shelley. About Shelley, it is very important to know that he was born in an aristocratic family, royal family, you can say, family of lords of England, and he was given all kinds of education which was supposed to be given to a member of the aristocratic family. So he was educated at Eton and University College, Oxford. From the beginning of his life, or when he can be said that he understood something, he was a man of revolutionary ideas. He rejected authorities of state and religion, means anything which was imposed on human beings, either by religion or society. He did not like that. He revolted against that. He loved freedom and revolted against tyranny and exploitation. When he was a student in the Oxford University, it was supposed that every student should pray to God. It was a kind of compulsion for all the students. He, along with one of his friends, wrote a pamphlet. The name of the pamphlet was The Necessity of Atheism, that we should not be compelled to do anything. The result was he was expelled from the university for writing that pamphlet. But this made him popular, and his idealism made him impatient for reform. We can say he was a man of ideas and emotions. He led an unconventional life. He did not follow a traditional life, and he did not compromise over his idealism. He revolted against any system, whether it was system of religion or society. And the result was, as the society was not as mature as now it appears to be, and he lived a life of denigrated figure during his life and even afterwards also. But with the passage of time, his ideas were liked by a lot of people, and he became an idol for the next 2 or 3 or even 4 generations of poets, including the important Victorian and pre-Raphaelite poets and painters like Robert Browning, Alfred Lord Tennyson, as well as Lord Byron, and poets in other languages also. Now, let us talk about the poem. The poem, as you know, has been entitled Ode to the West Wind. During his lifetime, he was not allowed to see his children. So he was living a kind of life of exile in Italy near Naples, and once there was a stormy atmosphere, and that made him or inspired him to compose this poem. It was written in 1819 and it was published in 1820 along with his musical drama Prometheus Unbound. It is regarded as the greatest poem of Shelley, and it is called a matchless ode. It is a long poem of 70 lines. It is divided into 5 stanzas of 14 lines each, which is called terza rhythm prima. But the poem is not easy to understand. The main difficulty in understanding it arises from the abundance of similes and metaphors which follow one another with an astonishing quickness. The idea is the poet has made use of similes and metaphors in such a large number that it often creates confusion in the mind of the reader. The poem is one of Shelley's greatest achievements and has a deep human and political interest. Through this poem, the poet has given us a message, and that message has a universal appeal. The poem embodies his revolutionary and reformist zeal, his lofty idealism, and invincible optimism despite the crushing circumstances of his life. About Shelley, let me tell you one thing, that as far as his present was concerned, Shelley was crushed by all kinds of pressures, pressure of society, family, and economic means there were all kinds of pressure which made his life miserable. But he was an optimist. He used to say, if in the present there are sorrows, a time will come when there will be happiness everywhere. So this is about the poem, and we have read about the poet also. Now let us come to the real text of the poem and try to do its explanation. As I have told you, the poem consists of 5 stanzas. In this video, we will take up the explanation of first 2 stanzas. Now let us take the stanza of 1. The poet, as I have told you earlier, was in a state of despair. He was not allowed to see his children. He was forced or compelled to live outside his motherland. So he was in Italy at that time, and when the stormy environment was created in the sky, it inspired him to compose this poem and to express his views. So in the first stanza, the poet tells us what happens when the west wind blows on the earth. In the second, in the air. In the third stanza, we will see the impression or impact of west wind on the sea. In the fourth, there will be a relationship between the poet and the west wind. And in the fifth, there will be universal message. So now let us come to the first stanza, and the poet is directly addressing the west wind. Or in other words, we can say the poet addresses west wind by personifying it, as it is a human being who can hear him. He called it, "Oh, wild west wind." Wild means uncontrollable, which have no pressure of any kind, no restrictions. It can blow anywhere. So the poet calls it wild west wind, as a person who can hear him. Then he says, "Thou breath of autumn's being." The autumn season is the important season, and during autumn, west wind blows frequently. So the poet imagines as if the west wind is the breath of autumn season. In other words, we have autumn season only because there blows west wind. If west wind does not blow, there will be no autumn season. So it gives life to autumn season. "Thou, from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven." The dead leaves means the withered leaves which are hanging on the trees. When the west wind moves or blows, the leaves which are withered, they fall from the trees on the ground, and they are carried from one place to another place, like ghosts from the enchanter flee. Enchanter here, wizard, a magician, or a priest, you can say, who chants mantras in order to force the ghost go away from the human body. Now see, enchanter drives away ghost. Ghost is invisible, enchanter is visible. And leaves are visible, but west wind is invisible. So the poet has compared visible thing with invisible, and this is an example of inverse simile, and this also makes the poem difficult to understand when the poet compares visible things with invisible things with visible things. Now, though the explanation is very simple, that the west wind compels the withered leaves to go from one place to another place. Yellow and black and pale and hectic red. See, the poet says these leaves which are falling from the trees, they are of various colors. They are of yellow color, some of them are black, some of them are pale, yellowish, hectic red, very red, exciting red. They are of different colors. Pestilence-stricken multitude. Pestilence is a kind of disease. It appears as if they have been victim of a disease. They have been stricken by some disease, paralysis. A multitude means a large number, and they are falling in such a large number that it is very difficult to count them, or uncountable, you can say in my word. They are falling, and they are carried away from one place to another by the force of west wind. "O thou," again the poet addresses west wind. He says, "Who chariotist," chariot from chariot means carry from one place to another, to their dark wintry bed. Now see the imagination or the understanding of the system of the nature by the poet. The poet says the west wind carries the what? There is a subject which is given in the next line, the winged seeds. The poet has used wing, an adjective before seeds. Now, wing means which can fly, but the seeds actually do not have wings. It is the force of the west wind which make them to go from one place to another place, and the poet imagines as if they have winged. Where they go, they are going to some, you can say, digging place, some low places in the earth, where they will live there throughout the winter season. The seeds will buried in the earth and they will remain there throughout the winter season. That is why the poet calls it wintry bed, where they lie cold and low. There they will remain in the earth, very at low, means inside the earth. How? Each like a corpse within its grave. Again the comparison simile. Corpse means dead body. Just as a dead body is buried inside the earth in its grave and it remained inactive there forever. But the seeds which are also buried in the earth, they will remain inactive only for the winter season. Until thy azure blue, your sister of the spring shall blow her clarion, this trumpet over the dreaming earth. The poet imagines as if throughout the winter, as there were no activities, as if the earth was sleeping and having dream. When the spring season comes, winds starts blowing, and as if they are making the seeds to get up from their burial place and fill, there is in the bracket, driving sweet birds like flocks to feed in the air. It is given in bracket. Anything which is given in bracket after commas, it is known as additional information. Actually, it is a simile. As I have told you, the poem becomes very difficult because of the use of similes by the poet. Driving and making them, compelling them, sweet birds like flocks to feed in the air. The impact of the spring season is such that the seeds which were buried inside the earth, they now come out in the form of birds in large numbers. They have been compared as a shepherd takes his flock of sheep to feed in or to graze in the fields. Similarly, these seeds are forced by the west wind to come out from their burial place in the air with living hues and odors. Hues, colors, odors, smells, plain and ill, plain places and hilly area. The idea is these birds, they start sprouting in such a large number that the whole area of plains, that is fields and hilly area are filled with different kinds of different colorful birds and smells. All these filled the whole environment with different kind of smells and colors. They bloom in such a large number. Now in the end, the poet again calls the west wind and addressing it, says, wild spirit, uncontrollable. There is no control over the movement of west wind. Which art moving everywhere? Art means arm. The west wind is moving everywhere, whether it is plain or hill, means or every place on the earth. Destroyer and preserver. These are two words which make it very important. Destroyer. What it has destroyed? It has destroyed the leaves which were withered. And preserve, it has preserved, that is, keep them safe, the seeds for the future. The idea is, which is old has been destroyed and which is good for the future have been preserved by the west wind. So the poet calls it destroyer as well as preserver. Hear, O hear. The poet again requests the west wind to listen to his what he wants to say. In this way, in this stanza, the poet has described the activities which are carried out by the west wind on the earth. Now, let us come to the next stanza, stanza number 2, in which we will see the impact of the west wind in the sky, that is, the air. As I have told you, the poem is a bit difficult in the sense that if we go by traditional method, we will not be able to make out what the poet wants to say. We have to think and imagine. Then we will be able to understand the poem. Now in these three lines say, thou on whose stream. Thou, again, the poet is addressing west wind. On whose stream. Stream means wave. Mid the steep sky commotion. Commotion means noisy condition. That is, when there is a noisy condition developed in the sky. Thou on whose stream loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are set. Loose clouds, that is, on the earth, there fall leaves, but in the sky, there fall clouds. Decaying leaves are said, shook from the tangled boughs of heaven and ocean. Boughs means branches of heaven and ocean. Now, in order to understand it, let us come to make it clear. Think from heaven and ocean. That we are to imagine a big tree, very big tree, whose roots are inside the earth and its branches are gone up to the heaven, that is up to the sky. When west wind blows in the sky, from this tree, which is very big, whose branches have gone into the sky, fall leaves. But here leaves are not leaves, they are clouds. They fall just as on the earth they move from one place to another place. In the same way, under the impact or force of west wind, on the stream of it, on the wave of it, they move from one place to another place in the sky. And this happens when there happens noisy condition, when there develops a very noisy condition in the sky. Now these clouds, they move from one place to another place. Angels of rain and lightning. Angels here means messengers. These clouds are the messengers of rain and lightning. The meaning is, they indicate that there will come a storm with rain and lightning. Now another image. Again, the difficulty will arise. We will try to make it clear. There are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge, means which move. The west wind, the poet imagine, is moving just as water moves in the sea. In the same way, the air moves. and the surface of the air carries these clouds like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fierce maid. Maid actually is a female worshipper of Bacchus. Bacchus in ancient mythology is known as the god of wine, and she is a worshipper of god of wine. It means she is under the impact of, or she is intoxicated. She is worshipping, she is behaving in a wild manner. Her hair are uplifted. If you remember, there was a movie Raju Chacha in which Kajal's hairs were saw uplifted in the air. In the same way, these clouds, poet images, are moving on the surface of west wind in the sky from one place to another place. They can be compared as if the uplifted hair from some female worshipper of Bacchus. Even from the dim words, dim means dimly visible words, we can say meeting point of the horizon on to the zenith side. That is dimly visible horizon, that is meeting point of earth and sky, very far away. And zenith means the highest point in the sky. These clouds are spread from horizon to the highest point of the sky, that is everywhere. In a word, these clouds are spread everywhere in the sky. The locks of the approaching storm. These are indicator that there is coming a very powerful storm will soon blow. If you are to understand this, you are to make this, the locks of approaching storm are spread on the blue storm. If you will place this subject before R, you will find that the meaning is very clear. Such kind of use are always the fault of poets. Sometimes they create difficulty for the readers and sometimes easy, but this time they create some kind of difficulty in understanding the poem. So in the first image, up to these lines, these 9 lines, we are told that there is a stormy condition in the sky. Clouds are moving from one place to another place under the impact of west wind. Now the second image. See the imagination of the poet. Thou didst means funeral song, a song which is sung at the death of somebody. Now, when west wind blows in the sky, it produces some kind of sound. The poet imagine it is in a song of the dying year. Now, this funeral song is sung as the year is about to end. That is, it is the end of the year. And when somebody dies, it is natural that we bury it, or him or her, and a tomb is erected over his or her grave. The same kind of imagination here works of the poet. He says, to which this closing night, that is the darkness which is spreading now, will be the dome of a vast sepulchre, that is tomb. A huge tomb will be erected or will be raised over the burial place of the ear, and the arched roof of that tomb will be made of the darkness of the night which is spreading. Vaulted with all thy congregated might, means coming together, collected power. of vapors. That of the vapors will collect and will become the solid surface of the vaulted arched roof, that is inside of the arched ceiling, you can say, of that tomb, from whose solid atmosphere, though it will appear very solid, but under the pressure of storm, this roof will fall, will be, you can say, will be affected, and it will fall down in the form of what? Black rain and fire. There will come heavy rain and lightning and hailstone will burst as it will break down. So it will come on the earth in the form of hails, lightning and heavy rain. So west wind is very powerful. It causes lot of activities in the sky, and the poet, addressing to such a powerful entity, requests the west wind to listen to him, as he has to make a very important statement. Thank you very much.